What's up everybody, I'm HoopsandHipHop. So last week we began the insane task of covering facts on every single Unova Pokemon. The Unova Pokedex is massive, introducing 156 new Pokemon, so naturally we had to split the coverage of it into two parts, where last week we covered the first half of the Unova Dex, and in this video we're going to cover the second half. We've got a lot of great Pokemon to cover in this video, but definitely check out the first part if you haven't yet, because there are definitely a lot of great facts in that video as well. With all that being said though, get cozy, get comfy, and be ready to learn some more awesome facts about the rest of the Unova Pokemon. Starting things off with Minccino, Minccino has a fairly interesting Japanese name because its Japanese name is Chill Army. Now, that sounds like the kind of army that I actually wouldn't mind being a part of, if I'm being honest. Its evolution Cinccino actually has a very meaningful design because, as you might be able to tell, it is partially based on the fur-based fashion products that we see in women's fashion, with its own fur wrapped around its neck. Not only does this represent the controversy of chinchillas, which Cinccino is also based on, being hunted for their fur, but given the fact that this debuts in Generation 5, it could also represent the controversial relationship that's being talked about between humans and Pokemon in Pokemon Black and White, and this could also be the reason why we see Cinccino, as well as its pre-evolution Minccino, at the very beginning of the introduction of Pokemon Black and Black and White 2, because these Pokemon more or less represent that controversy. When looking at Gothita's shiny form, the only thing that really changes outside of a very slight shift in its shade of purple are the color of its eyes. This is most likely a reference to its Pokedex entries, where it says it stares intently at everything. It can become so obsessed with watching that it doesn't notice attacks. According to Gothorita's Black 2 and White 2 Pokedex entries, according to many old tales, it creates friends for itself by controlling sleeping children on starry nights. Now, all I've got to say to that is,
y'all need to hide your kids, hide your wife, and hide your husband, because they raping everybody out here.
Despite the Unova Pokedex being essentially a counterpart to Kanto's Pokedex in many ways, Gothitelle and its evolution line actually parallel Gardevoir and its family from Hoenn in many ways. Both are Pokemon with a feminine appearance based on the appearance of young girls to adolescents to full-grown women as they evolve. They are also both psychic types, and most notably, Gothitelle is known as the Astral Body Pokemon, which the Gardevoir line also receives inspiration from, and is where Ralt gets its English name, being a partial anagram of the word astral. Solosis might be a single-celled Pokemon, but it's actually a very tough one as well, because Solosis is tied with Abra for the highest special attack stat of any unevolved Pokemon. An interesting thing about Duosion is that Duosion, as well as the rest of its evolutionary family, are the only Pokemon currently in existence that can learn Thunder by TM, but are unable to learn Thunderbolt by TM. When it comes to Reuniclus, Reuniclus was designed by Keiko Moritsugu, and the reason why this is notable is that Moritsugu has a very brief role in the Pokemon franchise, because not only is this the only known Pokemon that they have designed, but they are primarily known as an illustrator for the Pokemon trading card game. However, even there they are very briefly employed, because she has only ever illustrated one card for the Pokemon trading card game, which was Heatran from the Arceus expansion. An interesting thing about Ducklett that makes it a little bit more enjoyable as a Pokemon in my mind is that Ducklett, as well as its evolutionary line, are based on the story of the Ugly Duckling. There's actually a pretty funny moment involving Swanna in the game Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Gates to Infinity, because in the game when you meet Swanna for the first time, she will say, "You can call me Swanna, just don't call me maybe," which is an obvious reference to the very popular song by Carly Rae Jepsen, "Call Me Maybe." Vanillite, as well as the rest of its evolutionary family, are some of, if not the very first Pokemon to be designed by someone who is from the western side of the world, as they were all designed by James Turner, who is a graphic artist who works at Game Freak, who is originally from Great Britain. Its evolution Vanillish, coincidentally enough, actually weighs the exact same amount as Lyra, the female protagonist from Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, coming in at 90.4 pounds. According to Vanillix's Ultra Moon Dex entry, Vanillix is born when two Vanillish, half melted by the day's light, stick to each other and freeze together in the cold return of night. Basically what this means is that Vanillix is the result of a grotesque bonding between two Vanillish who are already half dead. No thanks. Moving on to Deerling, Deerling's French name is Vivaldime, which comes from the name of the famous composer Vivaldi. The reason why this is the case is because Vivaldi is also the composer of the classical musical piece, The Four Seasons, which perfectly ties into Deerling's concept and design. Its evolution Saucebuck also gets its name from an interesting source as well, because the sauce part of its name is actually an acronym for the names of the seasons: summer, autumn, winter, and spring. The Pokemon Emolga is based on the Japanese dwarf flying squirrel, which lives on the island of Honshu in real-life Japan. Honshu is also the location of the real-world Kanto region, which ties into the idea that Unova's Pokedex is a parallel to the Pokedex of Kanto's, especially when you consider that Emolga is a Pikachu clone, who of course is native to Kanto. According to Carablast's Pokedex entries, these mysterious Pokemon evolve when they receive electrical stimulation while they are in the same place as Shelmet. This Pokedex entry is actually a reference to the fact that Carablast has to be traded for Shelmet in order to evolve, hence the electrical stimulation. An ironic fact about Escavalier is that it is based on the Drillis genus of beetle, which is a type of beetle that is known for eating snails and stealing their shells, hence the inspiration for this Pokemon. However, with that being said, Escavalier gets its name from escargot, which is the French word for snail and has more of a snail shape as opposed to a beetle shape. Granted, this is because it stole a snail's shell, but I digress. Fungus, as well as its evolution Amoonguss, actually have a lot in common with a number of different Pokemon, that being Paris, Parasect, Shroomish, and Breloom, all of whom are known as the Mushroom Pokemon. On top of that, all of these Pokemon also share a common move, that being Spore, and they all have the same ability of Effect Spore. Amoonguss and Fungus also have their own strengths and weaknesses as well, because while Amoonguss has the highest base HP stat of all Poison-type Pokemon, its pre-evolution Fungus just so happens to have the lowest base speed stat of all Poison-type Pokemon as well. Frillish is one of, if not the only Pokemon outside of the first couple generations whose prototype name is actually known. Because while Frillish's Japanese name is, and I'm going to pronounce this incorrectly, Peruril, Frillish's prototype name in Japanese was actually Perunsu. It's kind of ironic that Jellicent, being a jellyfish Pokemon, is part ghost type, considering there is actually a species of jellyfish known as Turritopsis dorni that is actually immortal and is one of the very few animal species on Earth that is able to achieve this feat. Alomomola gets its name from Mola Mola, which is the scientific name of the ocean sunfish, which Alomomola is based on. It also gets part of its name from the Hawaiian word aloha, because the ocean sunfish likes to inhabit tropical areas like Hawaii. Now, given the fact that this Pokemon is based on the ocean sunfish, and it gets part of its name from the Hawaiian word aloha, this basically makes Alomomola an unofficial Alola Pokemon. But it actually makes sense since Alomomola is a Unova Pokemon, and Unova, just like Alola, is based in an area of the United States. Next up, Joltik is tied with Flabebe, Cutiefly, Comfey, and Cosmoem as the smallest Pokemon ever, coming in at a whopping 4 inches tall. Its evolution Galvantula actually made an appearance in a very obscure Pokemon manga known as Pokemon plus Nobunaga's Ambition, Ransei's Color Picture Scroll, which is a Pokemon manga adaptation of the game Pokemon Conquest. Now, the reason why this manga is so obscure is because rather than being in book form like regular Pokemon manga, this manga was actually hosted on Japanese video sharing site Nico Nico. Even though its evolution Ferrothorn is known as a fairly competitively viable Pokemon, Ferroseed is actually a pretty weak Pokemon because it has the lowest base speed and special attack of any Grass-type Pokemon, and it also has the lowest base speed stat of any Steel-type Pokemon as well. However, Ferrothorn redeems its pre-evolution a little bit as it is tied with Kartana for the highest base defense stat of all Grass-type Pokemon. This actually makes sense because Ferrothorn and Kartana, along with Ferroseed, are the only Grass-Steel-type Pokemon in existence. Clink, as well as the rest of its evolutionary family, have a shiny coloration that is actually based around the concept of copper, because not only do their bodies turn a copper color, but their nose actually turns a green color as well, as does copper when it oxidizes into copper carbonate. Its evolution Clang was also the last non-legendary or mythical Pokemon from Generation 5 to make its debut into the main series anime. Klinklang is a Pokemon who has received heavy criticism ever since it was introduced, not only for its design just being a direct combination of its pre-evolutions, but also its name being a direct combination of its pre-evolutions as well. And the trophy information for Klinklang in the North American version of Super Smash Bros. For Wii U actually recognizes this and pokes fun at it, stating that this Pokemon evolves in the following order: Klink, Klang, and finally Klinklang. I wonder what it would be called if it evolved again. Kling Klang Klung? The noise from that Pokemon would be unbearable. Dynamo, as well as both of its evolutionary relatives, are the only Pokemon without any weakness whatsoever. Even though they are pure electric types, they have the Levitate ability, which takes away their one true weakness in the ground type. Believe it or not, Electric is also the only member of its evolutionary family that learns any moves whatsoever by leveling up. It is also the only middle evolution of a 3-stage evolutionary family where this is the case. Its evolution Electros is also the only Pokemon outside of Generation 1 to require the use of a Thunderstone in order to evolve from its pre-evolution. LGM actually gets its name from LGM, which is an abbreviation for Little Green Men, which is of course a common way in popular culture to refer to extraterrestrials. Behem also gets its name from another extraterrestrial abbreviation, that being BEM, which stands for Bug-Eyed Monster, which was an old-fashioned term that was once also used to refer to extraterrestrials. Even though Litwick's evolutionary family is very popular amongst fans, it's kind of sucky as a Pokemon because not only does it have the lowest base speed and attack of all Fire-type Pokemon, it also has the lowest base attack of all Ghost types as well. According to Lampent's Black 2 and White 2 Pokedex entries, the spirits it absorbs fuel its baleful fire. It hangs around hospitals waiting for people to pass on. Now that has got to be one of the most morbid and dark Pokedex entries I have or ever will read ever. Chandelure does not learn any moves by level up past level 1, and it is unable to learn the move Will-O-Wisp by level up, despite the fact that it is based on the Will-O-the-Wisp and its eastern equivalent, the Hitodama. Axew is one of the most iconic Pokemon in the Black and White arc of the anime because of the fact that it is owned by Iris. Iris received Axew in her hometown in the Village of Dragons, however, the Village of Dragons is kind of all over the place depending on the canon you're looking at. In the anime, the Village of Dragons is said to be located in Unova near Opaloosid City, however in the games, it is stated to be in a remote place very far away from Unova. However, in the Pokemon Adventures manga, the Village of Dragons is said to be Blackthorn City in the Johto region, which even though Blackthorn City is a dragon village, this seems like a very odd claim to say the least. A very cool fact about its evolution Fracture is that Fracture was actually the very first Generation 5 Pokemon to be designed. Haxorus probably has one of the coolest names of any Pokemon ever, because Haxorus's name in Mandarin Chinese is Shuangfu Zhanlong, which literally translates to Double Axe Battle Dragon. Yes please, I'll take 5. In Cupchew's shiny form, its head turns purple. Due to the fact that the color purple is associated with the poison type in the Pokemon world, this could be a reference to the concept of a head cold, since Cupchew is already heavily associated with the common cold in its standard design, with snot coming out of its nose. Beartic's name is a pretty straightforward combination of the words bear and Arctic. However, it gets infinitely more cool after a little bit of research because the word Arctic actually derives from the word Arctos, which means bear in ancient Greek. According to the Pokedex, when Cryogonal's body temperature goes up, it turns into steam and vanishes, but when the temperature goes down, it returns to ice. This is kind of ironic because in all of the games where you can catch Cryogonal in the wild, it has a 5% chance of having a Never Melt Ice as a held item, which is basically the exact opposite of what it does itself when the temperature goes up. An interesting thing about Shelmet is that even though Carablast, when it evolves into a Scavalier, gains a secondary steel type from the armor it steals from Shelmet, Shelmet itself is only a pure bug type, despite obviously having the same exact armor. We've already discussed this with the Scavalier, but in order to evolve Shelmet into a Selgor, it needs to be traded specifically for a Carablast. However, if either one of these Pokemon is holding an Everstone during the time in which they are traded, neither Pokemon will evolve, not just the one holding the Everstone. Something that is surprisingly interesting about Stunfisk is that Stunfisk is the only non-legendary ground-type Pokemon that does not evolve into or from any other Pokemon. Moving on to Mienfoo's shiny form actually takes on the coloration of its evolution Mienshau's regular form, taking on a gray and purple coloration. Mienshao also keeps up this trend to a certain degree, where its shiny form takes on the red coloration of its pre-evolution Mienfoo's regular form. Also, while completely coincidental, its Japanese name is Kojondo, which just so happens to be a portmanteau of the name of famous Zelda and Mario composer Koji Kondo. The episode of the anime in which Dredagon debuted, which was the Dragon Master's Path, was actually skipped entirely in India for unknown reasons, and it wasn't until a rerun of the season when the episode was actually shown. When catching the Pokemon Golett, it has a 5% chance of holding the item Light Clay along with it. Light Clay actually extends the effects of moves like Light Screen, Reflect, or Auroravel from 5 turns to 8 turns. However, even though Golett is capable of holding this item when it's in the wild, it cannot actually learn Light Screen or Reflect or Auroravel, which you need to have in order to make use of this item. Its evolution Golurk makes an appearance in the movies White, Victini, and Zekrom, and Black, Victini, and Reshiram. The interesting thing about this is that in the White movie, Golurk appears in its regular form, while in the Black movie, it actually appears in its shiny form. Moving on, Pawniard as well as its evolution Bisharp are the only Pokemon that are able to have the ability Defiant as their regular ability and not their hidden ability. Speaking of Bisharp as well as its evolution Pawniard are the only 2 Pokemon who have the Dark Steel type combination. It just so happens that these 2 types were also newly introduced together in Generation 2. There was actually a special Bouffalante given away in Europe that was owned by Shigeki Morimoto, the head battle designer of Pokemon himself, in 2015. From August 2015 to January 2016, players could obtain a serial code that would allow them to obtain Morimoto's Bouffalante, which has a moveset as well as a held item specifically selected by Morimoto himself. According to Rufflet's Ultra Sun Dex entry, with its powerful legs and sturdy claws, it can crack even the hard shells of Shelder and pluck out their insides. However, this is kind of contradictory, or maybe it just means Rufflet is insanely powerful, because according to Shelder's Fire Red Dex entry, it is encased in a shell that is harder than diamond. I know I said Haxorus's Mandarin Chinese name is just about the coolest Pokemon name ever, but Braviary's Japanese name is going to give it a run for its money, because Braviary's Japanese name is Wargle, which is literally a combination of the English words War Eagle, which is not only very American, but it also sounds dope as heck. According to the Pokédex, Volibai's wings are too underdeveloped and small to allow it to fly. However, even though this is the case, Volibai is actually still able to learn Fly the move. According to an interview with Ken Sugimori in Nintendo Dream magazine, Mandibuzz as well as Volibai were added very late into the development of Pokemon Black and White, and when Mandibuzz was originally created, it was completely unrelated to Braviary, and it was only decided later that it would be the version-exclusive counterpart to Braviary. Heatmor made its debut into the anime in the episode Evolution by Fire. However, this isn't necessarily something for it to be proud of, because this particular episode, according to a Japanese rating system, is the lowest rated episode in the entire anime to date. Just like the Clink line before it, Durant's shiny coloration is also a copper color, with its body being a brown copper coloration and its eyes representing the green oxidized copper as well. A fun fact about Dano is that Dano is the only Pokemon whose letters in its English name are actually in alphabetical order. Its evolution Zweilous holds the unique distinction of being a Pokemon who can evolve by level up later than any other Pokemon at level 64. In addition to that, it is also the Pokemon who can evolve later than any other Pokemon from its pre-evolution at level 50, who is also able to evolve again by level up. Hydreigon gets part of its name from the German word drei, which means 3, referencing the fact that it is the 3rd member of its evolutionary family. This fact is also consistent in its pre-evolutions, where ein, the German word for 1, is present in Dano's name, and zwei, the German word for 2, is present in Zweilous' name. Speaking of Pokemon that evolve at a really high level, Larvesta evolves later than any other unevolved Pokemon that actually evolve by level up, evolving at level 59. With its evolution Volcarona, no other Pokemon has the same type combination of Bug Fire as Volcarona or its pre-evolution Larvesta. However, this doesn't necessarily work into its favor because Volcarona as well as Larvesta are the only Pokemon that have a double weakness to the Rock type that aren't actually part Flying type. An interesting thing about Cobalion, as well as the rest of the Swords of Justice in general, is that they actually share the exact same heights with those of the legendary beasts. For example, Cobalion and Entei are both 6'11", Virizion and Suicune are both 6'7", and Terrakion and Raikou are both 6'3". No other Pokemon has the same rock fighting type combination that Terrakion does. However, this doesn't really help it when it comes to the other members of the Swords of Justice, because Terrakion actually takes super effective damage from all of them and their types, that being Grass, Steel, Water, and Fighting. When it comes to Virizion, Virizion's shiny form actually swaps the pink and green parts of its body from its regular form. It also has some extreme similarities to Shaman from the Sinnoh region, as well as the Chespin line from the Kalos region, and even though it's more theory than fact, it's possible that it could have been in consideration as the original Grass Kalos starter Pokemon. I actually made a dedicated video on this subject if you would like to know more, because it's really more of a theory than a fact, as I said earlier, but it's still very interesting nonetheless. In Pokemon Black version, you can actually encounter Tornadus on Route 7. However, when you do so, you will actually hear the cry of Thundurus instead, because when you encounter Tornadus on Route 7, Thundurus's cry is mistakenly played instead of Tornadus's. Speaking of Thundurus, Thundurus's species is the Bolt Strike Pokemon, which actually is the same name as the name of Zekrom's signature move in both Japanese and English. However, it cannot learn the move because it is Zekrom's signature move, and it is rather odd because the term Bolt Strike is a rather unique and non-generic sort of phrase. When it comes to Zekrom's counterpart Reshiram as well as Zekrom actually made an appearance alongside Pikachu in the 2010 Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Now, even though there is not a definitive list of every single Pokemon who has ever appeared in this parade, I can definitely say that they are one of the only Pokemon outside of Pikachu who have actually had this honor. And speaking of Zekrom once again, Zekrom is actually lead art designer Ken Sugimori's favorite Generation 5 Pokemon. An interesting thing about Landorus as well as its counterparts Thundurus and Tornadus that you might not have noticed is that each member of this trio has a sequential number of horns, with Thundurus having 1, Tornadus having 2, and Landorus having 3. The Ice Dragon type Kyurem actually has the most single cries of any Pokemon that are used in-game, with 5. It has 1 for each of its 3 forms and 2 longer cries that are designed to play in stereo. The Pokemon Keldeo is the only member of the Swords of Justice that can actually be considered a mythical Pokemon, and there might actually be a possible very fitting reason for this distinction because Keldeo is actually based on the character D'Artagnan from the novel The Three Musketeers. Now, the reason why this could possibly be the inspiration for Keldeo's mythical status is because D'Artagnan was in fact, believe it or not, an actual person in real life. However, the fictional account of his life that was publicized and made famous in The Three Musketeers is actually far more well known than his actual life, which is where the term mythical could have possibly received some inspiration from, or at the very least it is a very fitting connection between Keldeo and its inspiration. An interesting thing about Meloetta is that Meloetta is actually programmed in the games to have the held item Star Piece when encountered in the wild in Pokemon Black and White. However, even though this is the case, Meloetta is unable to be found in the wild in those games as it is an event-exclusive Pokemon. And finally, we have the last Unova Pokemon in the Pokedex, Genesect. Now, an interesting thing about Genesect is that it has a signature move, which is known as Technoblast. And Technoblast is an interesting move because it can actually change types depending on the type of drive that Genesect is holding. However, every single one of the types that Technoblast is capable of becoming, even its default normal type, do not include either of Genesect's Bug or Steel types, meaning that even though Technoblast is Genesect's signature move, it is unable to receive a stab bonus from it. And there we have it, everybody. Those were 156, yes, I said 156 facts about every Unova Pokemon. Now, I've got to say, this video, as well as the first part to this video, were the most ambitious and long and just arduous videos I have ever created, but I still had a ton of fun making them and detailing these facts, so I really hope you guys learned something new here, and I hope you enjoyed the video as well. If you did, be sure to leave a like and let me know in the comments below which one of these facts is your favorite, or if you have another fact on one of these Pokemon that you would like to share. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe for more Pokemon content as well every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, as well as for my Let's Plays every Monday and Friday as well. Also, as always, I would like to give a shout out to my Spotify if you haven't checked that out yet, because most of my Pokemon remixes are on Spotify, so if you enjoy Pokemon music in general at all, I would highly recommend and highly appreciate you giving me a follow over there. And with all of that being said, I just want to say thank you one more time for making it this far in the video. I sincerely appreciate it, and I will be back with another one on Thursday, so be sure to hit that notification bell so you can be notified as soon as it goes live. With all that being said though, I will see you guys then, and until then, as always, I love you guys, and I will smell you guys later.